Welcome to SciFi Stories. Today I'm excited to bring you a wonderful story from the author Shadeskira. Let's dive into the fascinating elements of this work together. Let's get started. She didn't want to run. She didn't want to look over her shoulder or hide away in the corners of the city. But her father, in an infinite level of stupid and shittiness, sold her to the gang that runs her hab block. And so here she was running hard, a group of 3 gangers chasing her, her fate all but sealed as her species are not built for endurance. Sure, they could run and are known for their burst speed, but her pursuers were Valmite, insectoids that are tireless, emotionless, and unyielding. She stumbled into an alleyway, gasping as she was trapped, a dead end with no way out, her muscles already at their limits. Her lungs were grasping for insufficient air, and her fur was wet and heavy from the rain. Was this it? Was this as far as she got? 2 weeks of freedom while hunted. She looked around, hopeful to find a pipe or bottle to use as a weapon, but the only thing in the alleyway was the body of some homeless reject. Her pursuers scuttled in a few seconds after, clinking their mandibles as they spoke, their translators giving their alien dialect meanings as it converted their speech to galactic common. "See? The lop-bups is stupid and can't sense or remember terrain," the largest one said, standing at nearly 6 units tall as it rose out the octopedal run his kind uses. Yeah, stupid and dumb," the smallest one responded. "So what now, brothers? What were our orders?" "Boss wants her whole and unblemished. Apparently he has a fancy for her," the middle one said, likely the leader of these 3. "Or at least her kind." "Fuck you!" she cursed back at them, her hand reaching into her pockets to find anything she could use, but to her panicking mind she found only a small penknife. "Come on now. We aren't the bad guys. We are just the delivery boys. If you cooperate, we will be nice and buy you some grub and a change of clothes," the middle one said. She looked around. There were a few windows above them, but the city was mostly abandoned at this time of night, her chances growing to 0 as she willed herself to break her own rules. Taking a deep breath, she screamed as loud as she can, "Someone, please save me!" The 3 Valmites pounced, their bodies shadowing her from the light of the street like a veil of despair. Shutting her eyes tight, she wasn't ready, but a sick and hard crunch snapped her eyes open. 2 of the Valmites had backed off. The smallest was laying on the floor, its head caved in, and a tall alien standing in front of her, its back to her and hands balled into fists, one covered in the thick ichor-like blood of Valmites. "Yeah, I heard enough to know I can't sit back and watch. Not when you call out for help like that," the alien said. Its tone and clear voice gave away what it was. A human. She looked around, realizing the homeless person she saw before wasn't dead. But to her, he may as well have been. Humans are worldless and have no rights or protections in the Empire's territories. Their homeworld was destroyed before the Empire found them, and while they are tolerated, they are considered the lowest of the low, worse than the scum chasing her. But then again, this human stepped in and saved her, so maybe if she played her cards right, it would protect her. They have orders to kidnap me and sell me into slavery. Your kind don't stand for such practices. Please, help me," she says with a will to sound innocent and desperate. The middle one, quick on the beat and weighing his chances, doesn't miss a chance to quickly retort, "No, her father sold her off to pay off his debt. We are just here to collect," he said, standing a bit more relaxed and gesturing for his larger compatriot to do the same. "Besides, if you help us, we will split the bounty with you. 4,000 credits can go a long way for a hiveless like you." "I bet it would," the human said, but pulled out a long, serrated combat knife. "But I am not in the habit of going back on my choices, and I don't need money." It looked over its shoulder to her, its eyes shining red with cybernetic augments. "Are you a citizen of the Empire?" She hesitantly nodded, unsure of why it would ask such a random question. Her kind's homeworld was intact and paid its tithe regularly. "Stay there. I'll deal with the trash. Roomy," the human said before charging the Valmites. She had no time to consider its choice of words as the battle unfolded in front of her, and to her shock and slight horror, the human was in full control. For the minute it took for him to dispatch the Valmites, his combat knife seemed redundant as his fist was enough to crack the exoskeletons of the Valmites. But to call what he did anything less than a slaughter was an understatement. The human ripped the larger one's arms and legs off before caving in its thorax with its boot and sliced the middle one into 3 pieces with just 2 quick, effortless swings. Swinging the blade through the air to get most of the blood off, he then wiped the blade clean on a rag before sheathing the weapon again. Looking over at her, he smiled softly. "Don't you worry, Rumi. I will protect you," he said as he walked back over. She stared at the human in shock, her mind recalling as much information she knew about its kind, but her memory was limited, and all she could glean was that the one in front of her and offering a hand was male, taller than average, and most likely a former soldier of some kind. "Thank you. She tailed off, unsure of what she was meant to do. "My name is Dan Smith," he said as he gathered his small collection of possessions. "I am Xylidar Mayalphos, but my friends call me Zale," she said back, unsure of what was going on or what to do, but her mind refocused on the word he used to address her. "What is a Rumi?" He smiled wide. "Humans can't rent or own homes, so you are now my roommate. I have more than enough to pay for a few years and other things, but you will be the name of everything. Deal?" he asked, extending a hand to her. She looked at the hand, recognizing the gesture as something void merchants use when they agree on a bargain. Was living with a human worth the risk and stigma? Or was she just being foolish? It didn't matter. This human was offering his skills and protection in exchange for a roof over his head, a sentiment she could agree with. Taking his hand, she shook it in one strong and direct motion. Deal. Zale walked a bit behind the human. They were walking farther away from her HAB unit and towards the edge of this HAB block. He was tall, nearly 6.5 units tall, and built for war. Dark brown skin and hair braided back into a short tail. A few scars across his exposed skin and his clothes were shabby, but a uniform from the last war with the Xanalton Confederacy. "So, Dan, you fought in the last war? Why?" she asked slowly, wanting to gain some insight into this human. "Oh, yeah, when you are homeless and in need of a bed and food, fighting is a step up if you get 3 squares and a cot," he said back as he walked a bit slower so they could walk shoulder to shoulder, his duffel bag slung over his opposite side from her. "I mean, I would have been fighting gangers anyway. At least on the battlefield, it's easy to tell friend from foe. But you are worldless. You gain nothing from fighting for the Empire, so why fight at all?" she asked back as they made their way down in an elevator to the lower levels of the HAB block. He rubbed at his chin. "Because humanity has a permanent grudge against the Xanalton Confederacy," he said ominously. "Oh, I see," she muttered, feeling that this line of questioning may poke at something he is not comfortable with sharing. "Anyway, let's focus on getting us a place to live," he said, stepping off the elevator and walking not to the administration office, but to the gate out of the arcology she had known as home for all her life. "Wait, where are you going?" she asked, half stepping towards the safety he provided, but still fearful of leaving her comfortable bubble of familiarity. He stopped and looked back, a soft and understanding smile on his face. "You have never left your HAB block, but don't worry, Zale, I'll be right beside you. We are just going 2 HAB blocks over, an hour walk at most." She couldn't stop the nervous gulp, but took his hand as he offered it, shrinking a bit tighter as she left the space she once called her world, the sky above much wider than she imagined, and the streets spacious with ground vehicles traveling on specific roadways. Her eyes flickered as her ears snapped to every small sound that her mind portrayed as a drawing of a blade or the cocking of a firearm, but his presence next to her grounded her fear and anxiety a bit. "You are a Lop-Bup, right?" he asked with a small smile. "Your kind come from Lopbus Prime." She nodded. "Yeah. Is that a problem?" she asked nervously, her ears dropping a bit and fear taking a small hold in her demeanor. "Nah, you bunny folk are great company, and your ways aren't too far from what humans hold to," he says back with a warm smile. "Bunny folk?" she asked. She knew humans used nicknames for other races, but she didn't know the one for her people. He looked over and smiled softly. "Oh, sorry. Bunnies are a type of mammalian animal from Earth, small and fluffy with ears like your people, so we humans sometimes call your kind bunny folk." She reached up and felt her long ears that stood a bit off from the sides of her head, running her fingers through them. "Oh, so your people nicknamed us after predators of your world?" He burst out in hearty laughter. "What? No, bunnies are prey animals that were mostly domesticated by the time of the Sundering. The home fleet has a colony in every one of its livestock hangars." She seemed confused. "Your people keep animals alive on your ships?" she asked, having seen the human home fleet in the night sky once 5 years ago, like a roaming constellation of thousands of stars. "Yeah, humans are omnivores, and we need meat and vegetables to live. So when we were preparing to escape Earth, we took as much genetic material to clone our animal companions and friends," he said slowly, a warm smile on his lips. "Once we got our hands on artificial gravity tech, we built our first farm bays, and once it was deemed safe, acceptable, and humane, we built one on every ship." She was stunned and shocked by the revelation, and her lips formed her curiosity to sound, "But is it enough to feed a ship?" He smiled. "No, a single farm bay can't feed a whole ship of thousands, but that is what the agri-ships are for." Agricultural ships?" She pondered aloud. "You have ships in your fleet completely dedicated to growing and feeding your population?" "Got to go to one once. It was crazy, but somehow completely organized and handled well," he says in a reminiscing tone. "One agri-ship can feed about 50 ships or one of our supercarriers." She feels a bit off and nervous. "Should you be telling me this?" He smiled. "There is a saying to anyone that deals with the home fleet, watch your fire or see your world crack." He said, "We let most that are stupid off with a warning, but those that try to push their supposed claims of strength, we break their fleets and teach them a truth that makes the super governments of the galaxy nervous." "And what is that?" she asked nervously. Earth was a death world. They moved closer to their new hab block. It looked no different from her last one. His last comment left a lingering silence between them, but he cleared his throat, holding out a credit chip. "Okay, here. Go to the admin office, get a small family unit, and don't answer anything beyond your basic information. Also, if they ask, claim I am your bodyguard and don't tell them where you are from." She nervously took the chip and pocketed it. Taking a deep breath, she settled her nervousness, walked into the administration office, and found the renter's desk, happy to see a lopbud sitting behind the desk. "Excuse me, I would like to rent a small family unit." The lopbud at the desk was a man who looked over with a sigh. "How many inhabitants?" "2 medium entities," she said back, taking steadying breaths. The officer looked over and out the window. "You can't rent a unit with a human." "He is my bodyguard. All payments and naming is my responsibility," she said back, placing the credit chip down. The officer groaned, taking the chip and checking it, and coughed in a bit of surprise. "I see. I believe we can get you situated," he said, quickly typing away at his terminal. "Can I get yours and your bodyguard's names?" "I am Xylidar Mayalphos. My bodyguard is named Dan," she said quickly, not giving her last name just in case he tried looking her up in the planetary record. He types in the information and looks up, "Occupation?" "Self-employed, but my business is legal and allowed in Empire space. It's not important enough for you to record it," she says, trying to sound confident and in control. The officer seemed confused and looked at the readout on the credit chip. "Very well. I have a unit free for habitation on level 56, grid B, door 320. Let me get you the key badges," he said, standing up and walking over to the locker behind him, getting the 2 badges out for her and Dan. "Please run the first 2 payments now," she said, taking the badges and clipping one to her belt. "Of course," the officer said, and typed in something in the chip reader. A soft beep from his phone gave way to his taking of some of the money for himself. Corruption is not uncommon, and far too many low-end workers like him skim a bit off the top. Processing the real payment quickly, he handed her back the chip. "There, all squared away." "Thank you. I will be making payments at the start of every month going forward. I will not announce our exiting of the unit," she said, taking the chip back and checking how much was taken, smiling a bit as the officer took a typical sum she was told meant not a lot of gang activity. "Understandable. We hope you will enjoy your stay here," the officer said as she walked away. Dan looked over as she stepped out. "So?" 56B 320, and the office took less than in my last hab block. So fewer gangs. she said optimistically. He smiled softly and looked about, spotting what he suspected, only one gang marker drawn over others. That's good, but I think the cut was less because there is only one gang here and they have a monopoly on illegal activity and a better control on the administration. She frowned, having not considered that possibility. Oh, is that bad? He patted her head, the gesture somehow cheering her up and out of her saddened state of mind. No, it's not bad as long as they aren't affiliated with the gang that has your father's debt, and besides, I don't think we will be staying on the world long anyway. What? She said, shocked as they walked to the elevator. Yeah, sorry to say this, but a gang that can house and keep Valmite will have the influence to hunt you down anywhere on this planet, he said as the elevator started to move. We just needed somewhere with access to the data net and walls for defense while I call in a ride. Call a ride? Like from the home fleet? She asked nervously. The thought of leaving her birth world is the favorite dream of all children, to travel the void and see the distant worlds only spoken of in news and stories. He chuckles. No, not the fleet. Just a friend that should be passing through. She should be here in a month or two, he says, but looks about as the elevator stops halfway up the massive structure, and the maintenance sign flickered on as the doors opened. Come on, there's another elevator nearby. As they walked, she felt a chill run down her fur like a charge of static setting her nerves on end. Why does it feel like someone is watching me? She asked. Because we were just scanned. The wall we passed has a sensor suite built under it, he whispered, taking her hand gently and keeping her moving. What? Why? Who? She asked quickly, her ears perking up and scanning the area. Most likely the gang that runs the Hab block, he said with a smile. They are trying to figure us out. See, the chip I gave you marked you as a diplomat, but one that doesn't say to which government you belong. What? She asked, horrified, feeling like she was used. Relax. They are confused because I am here. No diplomat would hire a human as a bodyguard, he said softly, as they reached a new elevator, pressing the call button. Are we in danger? She asked softly. Not yet. But when we get to the unit, I need you to make a barricade to hide behind. With luck, I can get them to back off, however. It may still get messy, he says as they ride the elevator up to the 56th floor. If you enjoy captivating stories like this one, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes on HM's SciFi stories.